2011, our world went absolutely crazy. Do you know why? I know you don't know why, or maybe you do. Maybe you knew that before you clicked on the video, because that's when we had the upstart from the UK, not from China, Taiwan, and anywhere else around there. It was from the UK. He was an enthusiast, David, and he came out with his company, the Minirig. And it was good, enthusiast, but we was going, yes, brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. And then we was going, do you know why? Because it was wired only. And then we got the Minirig. It was the Mark II. And we went, yes, 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 thank you, David, because it was now Bluetooth and wired and geared to self-acclaimed audiophiles. I say that lightheartedly for people who have different kind of ears to the masses, let's say, because when companies want to sell to the masses, the big boom boxes, and there's a lot of other people that say, when I want to hear the detail and there's too much bass, my wife is complaining, she's banging on the floor or the wall. I don't know why I said that. In jest, we all have different tastes. It's just that most people in the market for the younger sector, it's the V-shaped sector. Minirig is not that company. And then we got the Minirig 2000, we got the Minirig Mark III in 2019. And we said, I said, hang on a sec, because the character was kind of changing. This is all based on my opinion and my ears. Other people may disagree. But some people did agree with me.
Hello, son.
Hello, Mum.
I just want you to know I agree with you.
It's a bit brighter, a bit more clinical, not quite as warm. But you know what? We got used to it, and then we thought, yeah, actually it's quite better, and I can hear a bit more details. But then you might say, well, it's just because the treble's a little bit more boosted. But then I would say, we get used to it. We were happy. We got an app, but it was a bit flaky, yes, and you couldn't pair them. Sometimes you could, sometimes you couldn't, and we had it. But then, 2024, it was our dream scenario. What happened now? Well, not that, but also we got the Minirig Mark IV. And the world went, hang on a sec. So I bought two. I was one of the early buyers of the Minirig Mark IV. Why didn't, what was that, back in April or something? Or even March, I think. Why didn't you review it then, Al? Well, that's a good question. Well, because I was a bit cheesed off. Why were you cheesed off, Al? It's your, a speaker you've bigged up for a long, long time. For a certain sector, it's a modular system, if you didn't know. It's got loads of options. I was one of the first to buy it. And then I found it's come a bit early because I bought this to replace my Mark III. Lots of feature updates and a lot of headline updates. But you know what they didn't tell us in the headlines? If you were one of the early buyers at full price, this is 150 quid, and I bought two of them, you won't even have the app support. You will have less features at start than the Mark III. So I figured I can't review it without the app and all that. In my opinion, I was pissed off. This was released too early. If you're going to release it without app support and a lot of the other advertised features, but they did say, by the way, they said on the website some features still to come, and they still say still to come when we've got them. They haven't updated the website. What does that tell you? I don't know. So, yes, so we're 4 months on or something, and now we've gone through some firmware updates that address some of the things I personally have mentioned and pointed out. I gave lots of feedback to Minirig. As a customer, they clearly took it personal when it was just feedback, and I wanted to be able to do a video where I got everything right and I knew why they did certain things even if I didn't understand it. But clearly it didn't go down that well. Some things have been addressed in firmware, and the last firmware, nobody even said, we've done it, well, thank you, because they did fix something that I had pointed out, but I'm not going to get into any more detail than that. Right, so that's where we are now. Now, you go out and buy a Minirig Mark IV, you've got the app fully working, you've got the features fully working, you know where you are, I can do a video, and we know where we are moving forward. I think we're on firmware 14 or something, and I think I started on firmware 11 or 12 or something like that. But I've had, I think, at least 3 firmware updates in the time I've had the Minirig Mark IV that have made a difference, and that's why I'm doing the video now. So I came as somebody who bought the Minirig Mark III. A lot of you will already be Minirig Mark III owners, and you'll be asking, and you've already been on Reddit, getting some confusing answers, I tell you. Should I upgrade to the Mark IV? Is it an upgrade if I've got the Mark III, or is it just for someone who's never had a Minirig before and they've got the Minirig Mark III with added features. Is that where we are? I'm gonna tell you. First thing is I've got this in my hand. Been asking for years. On the subwoofer, if you didn't know, this is a modular system. Can all be connected in Bluetooth. Well, multiple ones of let's say the satellite speaker, the main speaker, but the sub is still wired, and it's still the Mark III sub. And as far as I know, there's nothing coming anytime soon in way of a Mark IV. So the Mark III sub that went with the Mark III speaker, because they had a Mark II that went with the Mark II. There isn't a Mark IV at this point in time. I've got no idea. I don't get anything told to me up front from Minirig. I've paid for every single Minirig speaker that I have bigged up many times on this channel before. I've asked many times for rubber feet, as we've got on the Mark III sub, because a lot of us don't want to. I know they think, or maybe a lot of you do, always use it mostly that way up for many reasons. It's a 360-degree speaker that way up, as I think it's advertised that way. But if it's that way, it's an on-axis speaker, that way 360 speaker, in that it's the same sound all around. We wanted rubber feet. There's no rubber feet. Yes, the inputs do give you the ability a little bit to balance it like that, but that's not ideal for me because I don't want to damage those in any way. And a lot of us have workarounds or 3D printed out things to be able to have that on axis nicely mounted. They don't even do aftermarket cradles or something that you could attach to it to have it on axis. They are aware of on axis because we had studio mode if you went into the app on the old one to set it into on axis mode, and you can do this. I'm going to get onto the features in a minute on the Mark III. So just because I'm looking at it all the time, for £1, about 100 little rubber feet, and I stuck them there. I stuck 2 rubber feet. How hard was that? And I do that. But I'm pretty sure the reason they don't do that is because they're all going to be falling off, and they're going to get people all the time saying, "No, my feet have worn off. Can we have extras?" But they could have them as something aftermarket that you could fit on like that. But otherwise, go on Amazon and get 100 of them for about £1. It's job done. This surprised me. Something that hasn't changed. The battery was 28.9 watt hours. Still 28.9 watt hours. Both Bluetooth 5, as far as I can see from the advertising. The Minirig Mark IV 2024, Bluetooth 5. It says on the website you can still do stereo pairing, which is the whole point. It's a modular system, but you could do it wired or you can do it in Bluetooth. What hasn't changed? Still a 70mm driver. I'm kind of surprised. I assume it's just easier for them. It's a small company. It's an enthusiast in UK trying to, battle with the big boys, JBL and the likes. I could say Soundcore, but you know what I'm saying. On the Mark III, when we wanted wireless stereo pairing locked, so you turn both on and you want them still in stereo pairing. Yes, it's flaky. Yes, so it works for 2 weeks and then it doesn't work for 6 months. Blah blah blah. I mean, I never know why, and you always have to reset it, etc., etc. However, you stick wireless lock on in the app. You pair them as wireless. You turn them on within 10 minutes of each other. They still wireless stereo pair. Now you got to turn them on within 5 seconds of each other. The new controls. On the old one, you had one protruded LED that was your control. Well, it should, see how flaky they are? That should have just come on to tell me how much power. Let's hold it down. And that's the LED there. And that's your only LED on there. Now you've got LEDs, 4 LEDs that will give you your volume and your power status. But I find the new controls fiddly, is my headlines. They're now recessed. The reason they're recessed, obviously, is before I put one down there and the other one on top, it turns on because it's protruded, and that's the one way of controlling the whole of the speaker. But I still find this fiddly. If you've got big fingers, these are, not only are they small, here on my black speaker, the buttons are black, and if it's not turned on, you don't even have the light there, which will turn blue also to tell you the functionality. It's hard to see. Why can't we just have that in a different colour? I don't know. However, it's nice to actually tell us where the volume is. That's one LED tells me that I'm on low volume, and that's gone off. But if I was to turn the volume up, it would go up. But it's got accelerometer, so it knows, well, it measures gravity and all that, and it knows what axis it's on. But if you shake it, that tells me the battery is fully charged. You see, I shake it, it knows it's being shaked. Sometimes, you see, still a bit flaky, isn't it? what you're supposed to be able to do, and there you go, now it comes on. But you can see, not 100%. You shake it, it tells me I'm fully charged. Right, Mark 3, Mark 2 as well. So you've got 3 inputs there. What are they for, Al? Well, you probably know, because I'm sure it's pretty niche, the Minirig, and I'm sure most people coming here have got an idea what the Minirig Mark 3 is all. The Minirigs are all about. It's a modular system aimed at the more discerning listener, in my opinion. Top and bottom auxiliary, high quality auxiliary inputs and outputs. So you can daisy chain from here, but the bottom and the top are both input and output. On the new one, apparently to simplify it, it's now in on the top, out on the bottom. But of course, we had the gain modes, and I have to get onto that. That's why you can't do a quick video. On here, I'll get onto the gains, but in case you don't know, but it's high gain, low gain inputs, as far as I remember. And of course, we had a barrel charger, and the whole world was going USB-C crazy. So now we've got, that's the difference. We've got USB-C, absolutely brilliant. And it's not 10 watts. Oh, no, it's not even 10 watts. No, it's 30 watts, mate. All right, so now it supports power delivery in and out. You can use this as a power bank. You could do that on the other ones before, but now it supports up to 30 watts. That's great, isn't it? For a lot of people, the USB-C input alone is worth the upgrade. Was aptX SBC, now AAC SBC? For me, I don't get it. You may say you can't tell the difference, aptX. I personally think I can. Am I kidding myself? I don't know. So we default to AAC on Android as well, and that's my testing is in AAC, because that's what it's defaulting to, and I assume they've tested that on Android, and quite happy with how it works. We had 2 gain modes. So at lower volumes, you could switch it to lower gain. So the amp wasn't being taxed as much. It's a bit of a cleaner sound, and actually you get a bit more bass, in my opinion, and I've tested it before. And why else would they have done it? So I agreed with what they did. Aimed at, for me, the Minirig system aimed at the more discerning listener. I think the more discerning listener appreciates high gain, low gain. You can hear a difference, for me, in my opinion, especially with the aptX codec. I may be 100% wrong. I don't care. I'm telling you what I think. I think aptX makes a difference. I think low gain makes a difference. We've lost low gain, high gain. We only had 1 LED, as I said before. Now we've got 5 LEDs, and we've also got the functionality where if you go in and set it in the app, these will beat in time. I know it's a bit naff, but actually it's quite nice to look at. I quite like that feature. It beats in time to the music in coloured LEDs. The maximum runtime before was 7 hours. It's now 5 hours. That's the thing. So now 5 hours. You're going to get at maximum volume, I should say, at maximum volume, because it was 30. What was it? It was 40 watts. It's now 50 watts. So it's going to go a bit louder. It's going to give you a bit less battery time. That's 2 hours difference. That's why I'm surprised we've got it appears to be the exact same battery. Average use, however they do the testing, they didn't tell us, 30 hours. Low volume, I don't know, 1%, I don't know, but 100 hours. Charge time, sorry. So it took, at the 7.5 watts, it took 4.5 hours to charge the Mark III. You can now charge in 1.5 hours if you're using a power delivery charger at full 30 watts. Couldn't make phone calls with that, we now can do. Got a mic in there, that's an added feature. Great. We used to have a separate app for doing updates on the Mark III. It's now, well, it's kind of embedded into it. So you can go through one app, although it appears to kind of go into an updater. However, let's say, simplicity's sake, one app for the use of the Minirig Mark III and another app to update the Mark III, whereas it's now all integrated into one app for the Mark IV. In the old app, you went in and we could adjust the volume separately that we wanted on. It was flaky, but the facility was there to adjust the relative volume. Yes, we've also got low gain, high gain, but that's like you're either going to go quite low or quite high on the separate subwoofer. But you could adjust the relative volume to the Mark III in the app. That feature has gone entirely on the new app. It was 545 grams, and it's now added a massive 15 grams on me weighing my personal speakers. It's now 560 grams. Multi-point, that's pretty useful for most of us. On the other one I found, I had to pause on one device before the second device could play. Now you could do that without pausing, straight from one device to the other, and it would just pick up something. All right, I'm going to show you the expected frequency response, but as I said, it's never quite real world because of the different ways we measure these things, and because real-time limiters and all that and all that and all that. My personal frequency response is not in an anechoic chamber. It's quasi-anechoic. It's the best I can do. Smooth, 1/3 smoothing, so it gives you an overall picture of pretty much what to expect.
Measured on axis, the tilt EQ is off. Low volume, slightly V-shaped. We do have some bass boost, but there's not a lot of mid or deep bass. This is a speaker that really rolls off from around 100 Hz. And of course, on axis with EQ off means we're going to have a bright high end, because with EQ on, well, you get a small reduction in the high end. Doesn't completely flatten out. But if you forgive the lack of deeper bass, it's on the brighter side of neutral overall. If we overlay them, you can see overall, it's a couple of dB overall. You're gaining or losing depending if you've got tilt EQ on or off and how it's oriented. The only standout is, on my measurement, there was a bit more volume overall with EQ off. It didn't, at maximum volume, it was more than just affecting the high end. You got a bit more everywhere. If we compare that to the older Mark III, because the older Mark III has the high gain, low gain modes, obviously there's a big difference in volume steps. So if it's just in high gain, which I think most people used it on the Mark III, 20% is way down here for the Mark IV. But because we're in high gain mode, 20% starts around here. Ultimately, there is more volume on the Mark IV, but actually there's more bass on my model on the Mark III. If we overlay them so we can see easier what's going on, you can see generally overall it's kind of the same, but consistently we have a bit more bass for the Mark III. If we overlay them, you can see, because we're in high gain mode, so the louder volumes, although here it looks overall as though they're quite similar, the differences are definite when you're in high gain mode and at the higher volumes. That we've got a bit more bass on the Mark III, we've got a bit more high end on the Mark IV. It doesn't look like we've got more bass on the Mark III at low volumes here. It's because we're in high gain mode. And ultimately, we've got more volume on the Mark IV, but the headroom for bass is greater on the Mark III. 100% overlaid, 80% the same story.
So, very small differences, it appears, on a straight frequency response between my Mark III and my Mark IV. Ultimate headroom, in default, yes, you can adjust the bass, but I'm doing this in default because I've been doing this for years now, and I think the only clear way to get relative pictures on everything we're comparing is default, where they have tuned it to get the most out of it, they think, without going into distortion levels and all that, or where it starts becoming niche taste. Everyone, that's another comment always, you could have improved it in EQ. Well, in your opinion, improving it may be boosting the high end. Someone else's opinion, improving it would be boosting the low end or pulling the mids or something. Everyone is different in that way. We talked about, they've got a tilt, we talked about the accelerometer. They've now got tilt EQ, so it knows where it is, or how you're orienting. It knows if it's that way up or that way up, and it will change its EQ. Well, I've already showed that in the frequency response. Should I explain that beforehand? Probably. As you know, I like to cover every detail, and that's why my videos are so complicated and long and nobody wants to watch them. It doesn't really matter. At least somebody is doing it. So they're just slightly adjusting the high end. You've got to listen out for it. It certainly, you can hear it. I would say, I'm going to say it, whether I don't know if I should or not, but however, because nobody ever contacted me afterwards. In my testing, when it first came out, it was quite flaky. In my testing, when it showed it didn't always alter, and sometimes it was going constantly in and out of EQ. I did give that feedback. Look, don't want to make it personal, but however, I just feel I've helped something on this speaker and I never got any credit for it, or nobody even contacted me afterwards. That last update addressed what I had said about for me, tilt EQ was not working accurately, or clearly not as intended. Although nobody ever said, you're right, Al. The last update said improved the accuracy, and it has done. Now it works for me every time. I believe, and why shouldn't I say it? Why shouldn't I big myself up? I'm saying everything exactly before. I've been big in Minirigs out for years, and I'll still say things that are good. But what I will say is, it wasn't working. I found that. I didn't hear anybody else say that. It's now working on the feedback I gave. I improved it because of the feedback I gave. So now, it used to be called studio mode, but you had to do it manually. Now it will adjust for you. You can turn that feature on and off. that's a good feature. That's a great feature. I would have liked a bit more of a difference between up and down. Doing my testing, how most people will listen that way up, and listening quite sort of like that. So it's upwards, it's nicely coupling with a solid surface when I do my recording, and I'm recording at 45 degrees as kind of how you will hear it. So it will be not as bright as if you was listening like that, assuming you don't listen like that. So, and I'm taking advantage of low gain mode, because that's what it's all about, Mark III versus Mark IV. Other videos will address all the other ways you can use these speakers. I'm telling you that because I'm not using tilt EQ because I'm not recording it that way on till I get to maximum volume. Recorded that way. So there will be big differences here in the volumes because I'm putting this into low gain mode because I haven't written down the exact things. What was I? Yeah, so obviously it will sound like, this was like 65% or something in low gain mode to match 50% on that.
Si lo meto un aguacero, BBM, very big monetero. Quieren dinero, fundiendo cobre la que hay. Que no me corre la que hay. Fundiendo cobre la que hay. Que no me corre la que
So in low gain mode, it's almost like there's a tilt EQ around the 800 Hz mark. Mark III has more bass, less highs. So overall, there are tone differences between the Mark III and the Mark IV. But this would be different in high gain mode. But we're at the lower volumes where you'd probably be using low gain for the Mark III.
It's weird to me that it all tilts at 800 Hz, almost as though it's a deliberate tilt. I don't know if it is or not, because they say you shouldn't really hear much difference, and probably most people would not hear a difference between the Mark III and Mark IV. Between my two versions, I don't know the differences out there across all their speakers. My Mark III versus my Mark IV, I'm saying it seems a deliberate difference rather than just differences between my versions, because it does tilt at 800 Hz, which makes this warmer, more bassy. Not by a million miles, but if you've got a discerning ear, which is who these are aimed at, you can hear it. And I think aptX makes a difference, and I hear a bit more in detail, in a bit more quality, let's say. So that's je ne sais quoi. I can't put my finger on it. That's what she said. And she should have asked, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, so I think you can hear the difference. I guess a lot of people won't hear the difference. So you should know that. For the Mark III, Mark IV, on my two speakers, measured that way up at 45, how most people would listen, I think there is a difference. This is brighter. We already went for a brighter sound from Mark III to Mark II. I got used to it, and then I preferred the Mark III, and I sold the Mark II. It's the same thing again. For me, though, because it does like any mid or deep bass, it rolls off at 100 Hz. That's another thing for me. Where's the deep bass? I don't know. But obviously, they sell the sub. Is it to sell the sub, or is it because... is it because they thought there was a little bit too much distortion, as it has been said, in the transients? As you get a peak and it kicks in on the amp, that little bit of extra power in a short time, if you listen a little bit distortion, I just think most people cannot hear it. But if you sit there for hours trying to tune it, of course you're going to hear it. And I don't think that's a real world test. However, we've lost a bit of bass that I would have liked at that volume. Let's try it at 75%.
Watch me go. Is this real, baby? All I feel, read the signs every time. Let's be real, be real, be real. I do what I want. Ooh, I do what I want. Ooh, I do what I want. Ooh, I do what I want. I want. Hear me now. Watch me.
now both speakers in high gain mode, and the differences are the same that we saw at 50% because we've still got, it looks like a tilt EQ around 800 Hertz, which results in a roll off in the highs in comparison to the Mark IV for the Mark III, but more bass. These differences are not massive, but they're enough to let you hear the differences in tone between the two speakers.
It was always the case with the Minirig. As you went up into these louder volumes, that bass rolls off rapidly. That's why for me the sub is an absolute must, and that's why I think anyone buying one needs to know that to get the most out of the system, they will need eventually to get the whole system. They will need to go modular. Even at a minimum, 2 of these speakers is so much better than 1 speaker. Even more so, I would say, on the Mark IV than the Mark III. But I'm not going to do that in this video. So the differences are more, even though they're the same, it still seems to tilt at 800 Hertz. It still looks to me like it's deliberate, and I may be absolutely wrong, but it's a hell of a coincidence. Even in high gain mode, it's doing the same thing, just tilting that way at 800 Hertz. So I prefer that. Yes, I like a bit more of a bass. Hey, it is rolling off, and so liking a bit more bass does not make me a bass freak in any way, and I'm not. And I certainly, I prefer a deep, warmer sound than the upper bass punch that you will get even if you do use the sub. So I think it's more pronounced now. Because of the bass roll-off, this comes over as even thinner and brighter. If you've got the sub, that may just make it sound like it's clearer to you. So it's all about how you're listening, one on its own, 2 or whatever. But one Mark III versus Mark IV, those volumes, I prefer the Mark III. Simply because I prefer the warmer sound. If you don't like that, and I know a lot of people don't like a warmer bass, so they think that's unnatural bass. It's not unnatural bass. I mean, as you can see, it's rolled off anyway, so it's not about being unnatural. But it's the same difference as before, but even more pronounced, brighter, thinner to me. Is it a million miles? No. Would you have to listen for it? Yes. I've done it in AB. If it wasn't doing an AB one versus the other, you'd probably not even realise there was a difference. That was both with tilt EQ off, and it's going to be maximum volume. Again, tilt EQ off because I'm going for maximum volume, so I'm leaving the high end where it is, but I am doing it on axis to get the maximum volume. Obviously, that's being dispersed, whereas that's going to be directly at the mics. And so that's 100%. Is there anything else I should say about my 100% test? No, that's basically it.
So now to switch them to on axis because it's all about maximum volume. Tilt EQ was off on the Mark IV, so we've maximized its highs as well. And overall, we've got more volume on the Mark IV. But still, we see a little bit more headroom in terms of the bass on the Mark III. 150 Hertz down. It's not massive, but it does have more bass on my model on the Mark III.
40 watts versus 50 watts. Does it go louder? Yes. But hey, at default, and obviously I haven't played around. I've got a life. Got a lot of things in my life that I have to get on with. I can't mess around with the bass in each of the app and just get it right, and then you don't quite get the distortion, but you're getting the maximum bass and which one. In default mode, the way Minirig himself, as far as I know, it's one guy. Or is it one guy or 2 guys? I think it's one guy. Minirig themselves have tuned it on my 2 versions, and I got an early version, and there appears to be differences. If I go on their website, because to reset the Mark IV seems, depending on whether an early version or a later version, is a different reset. So there must be a difference between early version. Hey, David, tell me about my. Look, you've said it on your website. Is there anything else we should know about? It appears there's a different way to reset them. So Sonic's changed, hasn't it, on the early versions to the later versions. I bought 2 of those early versions. Bought them. Is there something I should know? I don't know. but they've openly said it on their website. So the Mark IV goes louder, but the Mark III has a bit more bass. Hey, maybe it's going louder is due to dropping off that bass. I don't know, because going from 40 watts to 50 watts is minimal in terms of how much louder it will go. It's not 25%, remember, dB, and how you perceive loudness. Logarithmic, you have to go loads, loads, loads to get a little bit perceived more. It's like measuring earthquakes and stuff like that. I said we're going to show you the app.
So I find it a bit weird that when you open up the Minirig Mark IV app, you've actually got to physically tell it to search for a device. You'd expect it to auto-look as soon as you open up for a new device. So I search for a device. So I've got my Minirig Mark IV. I have to click on the Minirig Mark IV to open up. And the first thing you'll see is we've gone from a 5-band equalizer on the old app with presets to the 2-band on the new Mark IV app. I have to say, it looks clunky, it feels a bit clunky, and it's heavily simplified now. So you can control bass, you can control treble, you can control the volume. But what you can't do, once you start messing about, is reset it to default values. You will see, it doesn't tell you where you are. It doesn't tell you naught or mid or whatever, and then you start going up. And if you're messing around and then want to go back to where you were, assuming you haven't set it to remember the EQ, so close the Mark IV down and then restart it. And then when you restart it, the Mark IV, you then get back to default settings. If indeed you want it to be exactly on default settings, but if you set it to remember its EQ, you won't. So I don't know why it doesn't have a simple reset button here. We go into the options, so you can set it to turn off automatically after 30 minutes or not, but you can't set it to custom times for auto turn off. You can set tones on and off, so you can adjust the brightness to your exact level, not the auto turn off. You can set it to automatic link up if you've got two paired together, but you will still need to turn them on within 5 seconds of each other for that to work. The LED VU mode, which is actually a volume unit meter. For most of us, it means it's going to be in time to the music. For the DJs out there, it's going to be a signal level indicator. Then save EQ on or off. I've got mine off. And then indeed tilt EQ on or off. You also can check for your updates from the app when it's got the information and your app versions. But then compare it to the old app. We've got the 5-band EQ. And you also can control the volume. So if you've got this paired with the subwoofer, you can control how loud you want the subwoofer to go or reduce the volume. You can't do that anymore from the app. I know this was flaky, but you could set wireless stereo lock simply on or off. And when it worked, you didn't have to start them up within 5 seconds. It's just whenever you turn them two on, remembering you need to put the master on first, and they would be in wireless stereo pairing mode. You did have the ability to take it out of standby mode from the app itself. We don't have that anymore. We had an amplifier power saving mode. We did still have the LED sync with music mode. So clearly the old app had more functionality. But yes, it was flaky. Assume the newer app is designed for simplicity and less customer issues.
It's a bit 80s, 90s style, isn't it? It's a bit clunky, less features. But look, I think they clearly had problems keeping up with the old app. Lots of features, more singing and dancing, simplified, bass functionality is there. Some of my conclusions. Because of the lack of bass, obviously, the nearer you are to a speaker, the more of that deeper bass perception you will get. Well, these measurements are all about 1 meter. Smaller speaker, it's not going to hit you so much. If you are close up, you get a lot of sense of deeper bass. So for me, this is a speaker best listened to closer up. It's not for going outdoors and having 30 meters away, but if it's just about volume, you could certainly do that as well. It is, for me, a bit. It's kind of like going from the Mark III, maybe not quite the same jump in terms of more clinical, brighter, when we went from Mark II to Mark III, but it is sort of like that going from Mark III to Mark IV. But a lot of people will just say, well, it sounds more detailed now, and they will say, and they will like the idea that there isn't a load of bass, and they will say that is more audiophile like. I don't know. I will say I'm not doing this in this video. If I get time, I'll do these in lots more, like I did with the Mark III and the Mark II. Loads of videos bigging up Minirig. Sometimes, a lot of the time, you have one speaker, you add a second, and the immersion is great in 2, and it sounds way better. I would say with the Mark IV, it's even more than just making it a bit more immersive. Absolutely comes alive in a way I can't explain. Is it because these are high quality drivers and the imaging is much better? It's highly detailed, it's highly resolving speaker. I can pick out more details. I can tell you it's night and day having one Minirig Mark IV to 2 Minirig Mark IVs in every way. Imaging, immersiveness, enjoyment. I would never listen if that was the option with one on its own. I don't particularly like listening to one on its own. The lack of deeper bass, for me personally, who likes a warm sound, is a deal breaker. But even though you're not getting more bass, adding the amount of immersion and detail that I sing and I hear and how this sound comes together, it's fantastic, I would say. But you're talking 300 quid. Is that worth 300 quid to you? Only you can decide. But there's still a lack of bass, and it's still on the punchy side rather than the warmer side. But even wanting that bass, that is enough for me to overcome. I want a bit more bass, having 2. But you also get the option of adding the sub. Sub takes it to a whole different level, adding that bass. How I will say, Minirig, if you are watching, I know you've watched videos of mine before, we've asked it before, but you know your fan base. For me, too punchy. I said that from going Mark II to Mark III. Would like a bit of a deeper bass, a bit of a warm bass would be nice. But obviously, there's only so much they're limited to anyway. As far as I know, there's nothing coming along the line anyway. So, hooked up in a 2.1 or a 1.1, very punchy. Maybe a bit too punchy with me. But still, I'd rather have that punch than not have the sub. But yeah, too punchy for me. Would like a bit less punch, a bit mix. So that's where... See, if I go to low gain on that to reduce the punch, it's too quiet. That's where having a bit more linear control over the volume on the sub would have made all the difference. There's no dedicated Bluetooth button. So when you first switch this on, I'm used to a speaker automatically going into Bluetooth pairing mode. I don't know why it doesn't do that. You will have to go to that center button, hold it down, it will turn blue. It will go into Bluetooth pairing mode. It's out there in the wild, whether it's ready or not. We'll tell each other all the time it's splash resistant. I think they once told me that on support. By the way, no, they no longer do live support. They used to do. They had a nice little live support with them. So you've got to actually go and email them now. But anyway, what was I saying? Oh yeah. So I've seen it, and I can't remember where, but I'm pretty sure they once told me on the sport it's considered splash resistant. Just know there is no IP rating. You do that at your own risk in a shower. The wireless stereo pairing. I know I'm not doing that in this video because you can see how long it and how much waffle. Do these in other videos if and when time allows. If Minirig do not sue me. What was I saying? Oh, yes. Wireless stereo pairing now works. So far, for me, it does work. We've got to turn it on within 5 seconds, and I find these fiddly. Why 5 seconds? I don't know where this 5 seconds has come from. I'm sure there's a logical reason, but I don't know what it is. And for me, 5 seconds is too short. That's what she said! It's going to be too short for anyone, isn't it? Oh yeah, it says on the bottom of the speaker, input, output, 1.5 amps. Oh no, it says, what's it say? It says 5 volts, 1.5 amp, but it does 30 watts. So I don't know why it just says, I'm sure, again, logical reason. Me being a bit thick, I don't know. It's a bit confusing when if you just look there and it says, oh, it only does 7.5 watts. Wasn't that the same? That's what it said on the Mark III. Is it just the same bottom for the Mark III? So we got, no, that was 1 amp. And it did 7.5 watts, so I don't really know. Oh yeah, so look, clearly on the Mark III, it says for input 5 volts, 1.5, so that charges at 7.5 watts, correct. And output at 5 watts if you use it as a power bank. So that's why, even though this supports power delivery, it doesn't say that on here. On here it says input and output, 7.5 watts basically, 5 volts, 1.5 amps. It does charge at 30 watts, so I don't know why it says 1.5 amps. I've just pulled this off their own website just in case anybody is watching my video for 5 hours instead of reading the actual Minirig website. One of the questions is, will it work with the Minirig Mark III? Because the Mark III paired seamlessly with the Mark II, by the way. But no, it won't pair seamlessly with the Mark III. They don't talk to each other that way. It's like a marriage, isn't it? They are, of course, designed to be in phase, which means they will sound great when connected. You're going to have to use the cable. So if you've got a Mark III, you're upgrading to Mark IV. Do you want to keep your Mark III because you think if you just get one, you still do stereo? No, you'd have to do that via the supplied cables. Will it work? The Minirig subwoofer, Minirig Mark III subwoofer? Yes, but for me, as far as I can see, you've lost the ability to linearly adjust the subwoofer volume. It doesn't say that on the website. Right, I think I've told you most of what I had down here anyway. I don't know what else is there to add. I don't think anything else at all. We've already gone into there. Just the latency. For me, it's a lip sync test. This is what I get streaming on my Samsung S10. If I get a few quid out of a few more adverts, maybe I can upgrade, but I can't at the moment because I pay for all my speakers. I've paid for 90% of my speakers. People out there think I get everything. I've seen it on Reddit. He gets all his speakers for free, blah, blah, blah. Pay for all these speakers. Very few companies, for reasons that are very obvious, contact me anymore. This is not Bluetooth latency. This is lip sync for me on my Android device, streaming YouTube on the Mark III, on both the Mark III and the Mark, on both the Mark III and Mark IV. I get zero lag. My resolution is 16 milliseconds. So nothing, and I think on their website they said it's 5 milliseconds, so imperceptible, really. In fact, I think they said it's equivalent of being 70 centimeters away. Anyway, for me, no lag. And they say the real world 5 milliseconds. On YouTube, SBC on the Mark III, 66 milliseconds, and in aptX mode, 50 milliseconds. For me, the 80 milliseconds is the cut-off point where I think most people would notice, so that's very good. And Mark IV, 16 milliseconds on SBC. It's Android, it's going to work better, isn't it? We expect. It's 85 milliseconds. It's just a bit wonky lip sync in AAC, but around 80 milliseconds, so pretty decent for both. And if you switch to SBC, probably imperceptible. Was that it? Is that it? Yeah. I think that was pretty much it. How much? That was just over an hour. Add in some of those clips, probably about an hour and a half. Do I do that? I've been doing brain dead edits and all that stuff on my videos. Should I do it? And then I get slaughtered for that? I don't know. Doesn't really matter. I'm never going to be top boy on YouTube, innit? And I'm sitting here because this is my therapy. I can talk and talk and talk, and nobody can say shut up other than in the comments. That's why I think it's a bit confusing, because I'm not quite sure which way they're going. Some things are dumbed down for the masses, but other things seem more like, reducing distortion for transients. That's pretty niche. I don't think most people would notice the difference. I think most people would say give us a bit more bass. I certainly could put up with a bit more distortion for a bit more bass, but then apparently that's what I've been. I don't know. I don't like huge overblown bass. I just think it's weird. I get known as boomy bass or whatever. I like warm, deeper bass, extended bass. For me, that's more natural bass. Slightly warm, slightly warmer than neutral. Whereas this is slightly brighter than neutral. What's the difference? Why is it more acceptable to have a brighter high end than a warmer low end? That's where it becomes very, really snobbish to me. That makes no sense. But I guarantee you, they'll be going on Reddit saying it's the most neutral speaker you can get. They say that about other speakers and stuff like that. I don't want to get into that. I won't say the name of it. Every time I've challenged, nobody can demonstrate the ones that are calling it, because there's no neutral speaker out there. That's the reality. It depends on. Let me get the measurement. When they do their measurements, they're standardised 1 meter. So these speakers are tuned a lot of the time, especially in the high-end world. They're tuned to look good on what has become accepted measurements. In the real world, as I said, in the high-end world, it makes more sense where you're expected to sit, in that equilateral triangle within that sweet spot to get the stereo, and they can predict where you're likely to be, the kind of room someone who is spending that sort of money on speakers would be likely to be in. It's far more logical to then say what would be neutral or not, because they can predict the listening environment. You can't do that with Bluetooth speakers all the time. And it's neutral, it's not neutral. Neutral as in measured where? Nothing you hear is neutral. Neutral is in an anechoic chamber. And if you listen in an anechoic chamber for long enough, you will go mental and it will not sound good. It will just sound weird. But hey, we got this from Harman, wasn't it? I don't know. It wasn't. wasn't so bad before we had this so-called Harman research. By the way, there's your clue. They did all that research, and by the way, then they added bass and treble, so it wasn't neutral anyway. But they said most people, to sell most speakers, most people would go for neutral in an anechoic chamber. In an anechoic chamber, and nobody listens in an anechoic chamber, and then they go on Reddit and they say this is good or bad because it sounds neutral. It doesn't sound neutral in your room, by the way. All right. We got there in the end. We've finished it. I finished it. Maybe I finished the channel forever. I'll keep going, as I said. Whether I do, I don't care what I do. I just like YouTubing. I just like YouTubing. By the way, it just came in my head, and I'm going to tell you. That's what she said. It's still annoying me when I did my video in the hotel in Derby in the Radisson, when that airport security stopped me when I was at the Radisson to say I'd been spotted taking videoing the airport, which is not illegal anyway, by the way. And I turned the camera off as they approached me, so keeping it on. And I could have done one of these auditing when they wind them up. So that winds me up now. I should have done it like those auditing when they say, I've not broken the law. I've not broken the law. What offence have I committed? And I'm not giving you ID, blah, blah. I remain silent. They get a million views. It's not about the views. It's about the views. I don't know. What's it about? It's about doing better than you did before, really. I'm saying it doesn't. If I was getting 5 last week, I would be, and that's how it has been from the beginning. I'd be chuffed to get 10 this week. It's just you don't want to be going backwards. Is kind of what I'm doing. But that's what it's about. It's not about a billion views. It's about doing better than you did last week. Just trying to improve your stuff. But does more views equal being a better reviewer? Of course it doesn't. If you look at the shills, the best shills of the biggest channels, the most views, and people think they've got more subscribers. They must be. I think most people are acknowledging now that YouTube has just become a marketplace for advertisers to sell stuff. It's only the reviewers that are low end and starting out that just remain true to their core. Because I guarantee you can't. Once you try and make a living from YouTube, you will become a shill. You can't do it. You can't make money. It's paying for your own speakers and getting tuppence for the adverts. It's impossible. I don't know. I can't. It depends obviously what niche they're in. But if they're in this sort of niche and they're trying to make money in tech, you can't unless you're going to do those promo. If they're fine making money, if they're going to make promo videos, though, they should. I've seen channels now that kind of on-off would say paid promotion, and now just stop doing that all the time. Clearly paid promotion, clearly adverts, and they're trying still to pass it. I'm not doing that. I've got sick of doing it. It's just a headache. Trying to out any of these shills, except for the ones that are really annoy me. It's been another video. It's been another train wreck. And it don't really matter. I've done what I needed to do. Someone will clearly come and say, well, thanks. Nobody else would have sat down for an hour and a half and gone through every little bit like you did. That's what she said. Hope to see you again. Thank you for watching.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
What the was that?
It comes from China.
My speaker's got deep bass, balanced mids, and a bright high.
Yes, mine sounds exactly the same.